Alright, let's hop in a time machine and zip back to the 1950s when the world was fresh off World War II and folks were popping out babies like they were running a baby making contest. Picture this, soldiers are back, the economy's buzzing like a sweet old Chevy, and everyone's got one goal: make tons of kids. Now fast forward to today and us millennials are like kids. Nah, I'm cool with my rescue dog and a Netflix binge. What's up with that? Why were our grandparents cranking out humans like it was their day job while we're out here debating if organic kibble is worth the hype? Grab a drink or a dog leash and let's dig into the wild clash of the baby boom versus millennial pet parents with a sneaky side glance at diaper bills versus dog food budgets. So let's rewind to the 40s and 50s to get the vibe. The war's done and everyone's ready to chill. After years of rationing, dodging bombs, and all-around chaos, people were craving some normalcy. And apparently normalcy meant having babies left, right, and center. From 1946 to 1964, the U.S. pumped out about 76 million kids. That's enough to start a whole new country or tank the diaper supply. This baby boom wasn't just a population jump, it was a full-on cultural vibe shift. Having kids wasn't really a choice, it was like the thing to do. You got hitched at 20, snagged a house with a cute picket fence, and started filling it with little humans. If you weren't knee-deep in diapers by 25, your neighbors were giving you the stink eye at the block party, like what's their deal? So why were folks so obsessed with babies? Let's break it down. The world had just clawed its way through a brutal war and a soul-sucking depression. Stability was the name of the game, and nothing said stable like a house packed with kids. The economy was on fire, jobs were everywhere, paychecks were decent, and you could score a 3-bedroom house for less than what we'd shell out for a beat-up SUV now. The GI Bill was tossing out cheap mortgages and school perks like they were free samples at Costco, so young couples were all in. Kids weren't just adorable, they were like a long-term investment. They'd grow up, get jobs, pay taxes, and maybe even look after you when you're old. It was like signing up for a retirement plan that also woke you up at 2 a.m. with screams, but it wasn't just about the money. Society was basically yelling, make babies or you're slacking. Women were expected to ditch their wartime factory gigs for aprons and strollers. Magazines, TV shows, even government ads were pushing this picture-perfect family life like it was the ultimate American flex. Think of those old school ads with moms rocking pearl necklaces, pushing prams while the dads mowed the lawn. No kids, that was practically un-American. And don't get me started on the peer pressure. If your cousin had 3 kids and you were still kid-free at 23, you were dodging some serious shade at family dinners. It was like a game of keep up with the Joneses, but the score was counted in cribs. Now let's flip to today. Millennials born roughly 81 to 96 aren't exactly sprinting to the altar or the delivery room. Instead, we're out here naming our plants, adopting shelter dogs, and treating our cats like they're the king of the castle. About 70% of us have pets, while only around 50% have kids. What's the deal? Well, for one life, stupid expensive now, raising a kid to 18 in the U.S. costs like $10,000, and that's before you even think about college. Compare that to a year's worth of dog food, a few vet trips, and maybe a fancy leash, maybe $2,000 tops. One's a life-altering bill, the other's a fun little expense. And don't even get me started on daycare costs. Alright, let's keep this time machine rolling. We've just left the 1950s where babies were basically the hottest trend since sliced bread, and now we're diving deeper into why the baby boom was such a wild ride, and why us millennials are more likely to swipe right on a dog than a diaper bag. Last time we talked about how post-World War II vibes, economic booms, white picket fences, and serious peer pressure turned our grandparents into baby-making machines. But what was really driving that kid-crazy culture, and how does it stack up against our pet-obsessed, kid-optional world today? Spoiler, it's a mix of survival instincts, societal nudging, and some straight-up math that makes dog food look like a better deal than diapers. Let's get into it with a cheeky nod to those kibble budgets. So back in the baby boom days, having kids wasn't just about love or legacy, it was practically a survival strategy. After the war, the world was rebuilding, and families were seen as the foundation of a shiny new society. Think about it, you've just survived a global catastrophe, and now you're trying to make sure humanity doesn't fizzle out. More kids meant more hands to work, more brains to innovate, and more people to keep the economy humming. It was like planting a garden. You sow a bunch of seeds, hope most of them grow, and know they'll help you out down the line. Plus, there was no Social Security or 401k like we have now, so your kids were your retirement plan. You raised them, they grew up, and maybe they'd take care of you when you're too old to mow your own lawn. Harsh, but practical. Now let's talk about what life was actually like for those baby boom parents. Raising a kid in the 50s wasn't cheap, but it was doable. A loaf of bread cost about 20 cents a gallon of gas was under 30 cents, and a house you could snag one for $10,000 or less in some places. Compare that to today, where a single coffee can set you back $5. Back then, one income, usually the dads, could cover a whole family's needs. Moms were mostly expected to stay home, whip up casseroles, and keep the kids in line. And yeah, it wasn't all rosy, gender roles were rigid, and not everyone was thrilled about the housewife life. But the system worked for a lot of folks. You didn't need a PhD or a side hustle to afford a family. Diapers were cloth, so you just washed them and reused them. No 15 a pack disposable nonsense. Kids shared rooms, hand-me-downs were the norm, and nobody was shelling out for organic baby food or $200 strollers. But here's the kicker, having kids was also a cultural flex. The 50s were all about conformity. You didn't just want to fit in, you had to. If everyone on your block had 3 kids, a dog, and a station wagon, you weren't going to be the oddball with 0 kids and a pet lizard. TV shows like Leave It to Beaver and ads in magazines showed this picture-perfect family life, and people ate it up. It was like society handed you a script: get married, have kids, buy a house, repeat. Deviate from that and you were raising eyebrows. Imagine showing up to a PTA meeting with just a cat and a carrier. Good luck explaining that one. Now let's swing back to us millennials. Why are we so chill about skipping the kid thing? Well, for one, the math ain't mathing like it did in the 50s. That $10,000 price tag to raise a kid, that's not pocket change. Rent's through the roof, student loans are haunting us like bad exes, and a single trip to the grocery store feels like a car payment. Meanwhile, a dog or a cat, way cheaper. You're looking at maybe $1,000, $2,000 a year for food, vet bills, and a few toys. No need to save for their college or brace for their teenage rebellion. Plus, pets don't need braces or soccer camp, and they're happy with a $10 squeaky toy. Financially, it's like choosing between a yacht and a paddleboard. One's a dream, the other's doable. But it's not just about money. Our priorities are different. Back in the 50s, your life path was pretty much set. Marry young, have kids settle down. Today, we've got options. We're chasing careers, traveling, or just trying to figure out who we are. Having a kid feels like hitting pause on all that. A dog, though, they fit right into your lifestyle. You can take them to a brewery, post their cute face on Instagram, and they're not gonna ask for your car keys at 16. Plus, let's be real, pets are emotional support superheroes. In a world where we're all stressed about climate change politics, or just adulting in general, a cuddly dog or a purring cat is like therapy without the $100 an hour bill. Here's where it gets interesting though. Back in the baby boom, kids were a long-term investment, but they came with short-term chaos, sleepless nights, tantrums, and endless laundry. Pets, they're the opposite. Short-term joy, think puppy snuggles or cat zoomies, but long-term they don't exactly contribute to your 401k. So while our grandparents were betting on kids to secure their future, we're betting on ourselves. We're hustling for promotions, investing in crypto, or regretting it and hoping we can afford to retire before we're 80. It's a gamble, sure, but it's our gamble. So what's the big takeaway here? The baby boom was fueled by a mix of optimism, economic stability, and a society that basically said kids or bust. We're playing a different game, one where freedom, flexibility, and fur babies rule. But are we really that different? Our grandparents dealt with their chaos. We've got ours. Maybe the question isn't why we're choosing pets over kids, but what our choices say about the world we're living in. If you had to pick diapers or dog food, what's your move? Stick around because we're about to dig into how these choices shape our lives and maybe even our future. Alright, we're cruising right along on this wild ride, comparing the baby boom's kid-crazy days to our millennial pet parent vibes. We've covered how the post-World War II world turned our grandparents into baby-making champs, fueled by a booming economy and a society screaming, procreate or you're out. Then we dug into why that era was all about kids as a survival strategy, while we're over here picking dog food over diaper bills. Because let's face it, life's expensive and pups are just easier. Now let's wrap up the main story by looking at what these choices kids, then pets, now say about how we plan our lives and secure our futures. Plus, we'll sneak in a little reflection on whether we're really as free as we think, or if we're just swapping one kind of chaos for another. Here we go with that cheeky nod to kibble budgets still in play, so let's zoom in on the baby boomers' world one last time. Back in the 50s and 60s, having kids wasn't just about love or legacy, it was a whole lifestyle. You weren't just raising little Timmy to play catch, you were building a safety net for your future. Kids were expected to grow up, get jobs, and maybe help out when you're too old to mow the lawn or drive to the store. It was a long game. You dealt with the upfront chaos, sleepless nights, mashed peas on the walls, and endless school projects in hopes of a payoff later. And it wasn't just practical, it was emotional too. Big families meant connection, community, and a house full of noise, good and bad. You were never alone, which after a war that tore the world apart felt like a big deal. A full house was like a shield against the uncertainty of the world. But here's the thing, those baby boom parents weren't exactly living the easy life. Raising a gaggle of kids on one income took serious hustle. Moms were juggling laundry, cooking, and keeping the kids from burning the house down, while dads were clocking long hours to keep the bills paid. And let's not sugarcoat it, not every family was a Leave It to Beaver episode. Money was tight for some, and the pressure to keep up that perfect family image could be suffocating. Still, the system worked for a lot of folks because the world around them supported it. Affordable houses, steady jobs, and a culture that cheered for big families made it feel like the right bet. Diapers might have been a pain, but they were a pain you could handle when a house cost less than a year's rent today. Now let's swing back to us millennials. We're out here picking pets over kids, and it's not just because they're cuter though, come on those puppy eyes. It's because our world looks nothing like the 50s, the economy's more like a roller coaster with a few screws loose. Rent's sky-high, wages haven't kept up, and student loans are like that friend who never pays you back. Raising a kid to 18 costs about $310,000, basically a house in some places. Meanwhile, a dog's running you maybe $2,000 a year, tops for food, vet visits, and a few squeaky toys. It's not just the money though, pets fit our vibe. We're moving around chasing gigs or just trying to figure out life. A dog can tag along to a cafe or crash on your couch. A kid needs a car seat, a schedule, and a college fund. Pets are like the low-maintenance bestie we all need in this chaotic world, but here's where it gets real. Choosing pets over kids isn't just about dodging diaper bills, it's about rewriting what security means. Back in the baby boom, kids were your safety net. Today we're banking on ourselves. We're grinding for that promotion, side hustling on Etsy, or hoping our crypto doesn't tank. Pets give us the emotional boost those cuddles hit like a warm blanket, but they're not exactly gonna pay the bills when we're 80, and that's the gamble. We're trading the long-term bet of kids for short-term freedom. We can move to a new city, switch careers, or binge a new series without worrying about daycare pickup. But are we really free, or are we just swapping one kind of pressure for another? Instead of diaper stress, we've got rent, stress, career stress, and the nagging worry that we'll be eating instant noodles in retirement. Let's talk about the bigger picture. The baby boom was all about rebuilding a world that felt broken. Kids were a symbol of hope, a way to say we're here and we're not going anywhere. Our pet parent life. It's about surviving a world that feels like it's spinning out of control. Climate change, politics, the gig economy, it's a lot. Pets are our therapy, our companions, our way of finding joy in the madness. But they're also a reflection of our priorities, flexibility, independence, and living for today instead of banking on tomorrow. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Our grandparents dealt with their chaos, war, rationing, conformity. We've got our skyrocketing costs, endless hustle, and a planet that's not exactly thriving. Different game, same grit. So what can we take from this? The baby boom shows us that people can build something solid even after the world falls apart. They bet on kids' community and a future they could trust. We're betting on ourselves, our pets, and a life that feels good right now. Both choices come with trade-offs. Diapers were a hassle, but they tied families to a bigger purpose. Dog food's easier, but it's on us to figure out the long game. So here's the question. Are we dodging responsibility, or are we just playing the hand we've been dealt? If you're out there cuddling your fur baby, or maybe even juggling a kid, what's your take? How do you plan for a future when the world's so unpredictable? Stick with us, because next we're tying this all together with some real talk about what these choices mean for our wallets, our hearts, and the world we're leaving behind, okay? We've been on quite the journey, haven't we? We zipped back to the 1950s when the baby boom had folks churning out kids like it was their patriotic duty, fueled by a roaring economy and a society that basically said, no kids, no way. Then we swung to today, where us millennials are like, kids, I'll stick with my dog and a decent Wi-Fi connection, thanks. We've dug into why our grandparents bet big on babies as a survival strategy, while we're out here picking pets for the cuddles and the lower price tag diapers versus kibble budgets, anyone. Now let's wrap this up with some real talk about what these choices mean for our lives, our wallets, and the future we're all trying to figure out. Plus, we'll toss in some thoughts to chew on and a nudge to keep this convo going. Let's do this. So let's recap the wild ride. Back in the baby boom era from 1946 to 1964, the world was all about rebuilding after World War II. Some 76 million babies were born in the US, alone, turning suburbs into Kid Central. It wasn't just about love or legacy kids were a long-term plan. They'd grow up, get jobs, and maybe take care of you when you're old, all while keeping society humming. The economy made it possible, houses were cheap, jobs were steady, and diapers were just cloth you washed and reused. But it wasn't all easy. Parents hustled hard, and society's pressure to pop out kids was intense. Fast forward to now, and we're in a different game. Raising a kid costs about $310,000, while a pet's maybe $2,000 a year. No wonder we're choosing fur babies over human ones. Pets fit our hustle-heavy rent crazy who's got time for that. Lives, what's cool is how these choices show what's changed. Back then, a big family was your safety net, your community, your future. It was a bet on stability in a world that had just been through hell. Today, we're betting on ourselves. We're chasing careers, dodging student loans, and hoping we can afford to retire someday. Pets, they're our emotional wingmen, giving us love without the 18-year commitment. But here's the thing, both eras had their chaos. Our grandparents dealt with war and conformity. We're wrestling with skyrocketing costs and a planet that's throwing curveballs. They chose kids to build a future. We're choosing pets to survive the present. Neither's right or wrong, just different ways of playing the hand you're dealt. Now let's get real for a second. What can we learn from this? The baby boom teaches us that people can rebuild even after the worst times. Those parents faced a wrecked world and said, let's make it better one kid at a time. Their grit and teamwork raising families, building communities got them through. We're not so different. We're hustling through our own mess, whether it's climate change, job insecurity, or just trying to afford avocado toast without going broke. Pets might not be our retirement plan, but they're a reminder to find joy where we can. And maybe, just maybe, we can borrow a page from our grandparents' book plan, smart, lean on each other, and don't let the chaos win. Whether it's saving for a kid, a dog, or just yourself, it's all about thinking ahead while living now. Here's something to chew on. Are we really freer than our grandparents were? They had societal pressure to have kids. We've got pressure to hustle, post perfect Instagram lives, and somehow have it all. Are we dodging responsibility by picking pets? Or are we just adapting to a world that's pricier and less predictable? And what about the future? If we're not having as many kids, who's gonna keep the world spinning when we're old? Will our dogs visit us in the nursing home? Or are we banking on robots for that? These are big questions, and they're worth thinking about while you're scooping kibble or who knows, changing a diaper. So what's your move? If you're out there loving on your fur baby, juggling a kid, or just trying to figure out life, how are you planning for the long haul? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear how you're navigating this crazy world. And if you dug this deep dive into baby boomers versus pet parents, give this video a like, share it with your crew, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next trip through history's wildest moments. Oh, and if you're itching for more, check out our video on how our ancestors survived the craziest times. It's got all the juicy history vibes you didn't know you needed. Thanks for hanging out with us today. You're awesome, and we'll catch you in the next one.